Welcome, everybody. My name is Amr Deer. I lead operations for Google for Startups, and I have the honor of co-moderating this event with Hannah. Hannah, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Sure. Hannah, I am Director of Operations at a startup that's part of the Google program, and I joined there from Amazon Fashion, which is why I'm here.
Yeah, some feedback. It might be me. It is me, isn't it? I'm going to hold this then for a bit. So, first of all, I want to say that I want to give a big shout out to Marianne and the team. You're going to hear from them a little bit later. But the Startup Grind team is incredible. How many of you have been to a Startup Grind event before? Wow, amazing. More than half. I have also been in the audience at Startup Grind events. They do an incredible job and have done a lot for this ecosystem. I also want to call out something that may have been on some of your minds when you saw this event that was on my mind, which is we have an event about fashion tech, and everyone initially on the panel was male. And we had a conversation about that when Marianne had asked me and when we saw the final list of speakers. And turns out it was a matter of lots of invites going out and calendars and everything else ended up meaning that we didn't have the diversity we would like to have had. Luckily, I had a problem solver who works in the same building with me, Hannah, who is not only here to co-moderate with me, but also has a background and skill set that I don't have. It's very relevant for this panel, given that her background is in supply chain and also previously at Amazon Fashion. So one thing is, do you want to be completely kind of explicit and transparent about that we've acknowledged this and we want to address it. If there are ways that we can do a better job, let us know. And with that, and one more thing is we're going to have we're going to have questions at the end. So we're going to do about 40 minutes of Q&A with Hannah and I moderating, co-moderating. And at the end, we're going to get questions from the audience. And then for a few minutes at the end, we're going to hear about actually some of you who are entrepreneurs doing some interesting things in fashion and tech. So Hannah has the honor of the first question.
Yeah, so going in with an icebreaker. Everyone's probably read about you and knows about your highlight story. But if you could summarize your careers with your lowlights to start us off.
I'm going to be the first victim, huh? Okay, thank you. Well, I've had 4 companies in the past, which I have got to the point of acquisition, which I'm not normally telling the people. There's been a couple of more companies in my past which I hate the word failure. I quite prefer the word learning experience. Okay. But now when we built, there's a couple of FitsMe people here in the audience. Hi. When we built this crazy idea of building shape-shifting robotic mannequins to measure how different garments fit different shapes of people, one of the very first international media coverage was in London-based internet retailing. And we had this column about those crazy robots taking shapes and taking the photos, how garments fit before people buy them online. And then years after, when I got to be friends with Ian Jindal, the editor, he told me the reason he had this article was because he thought it was such a crazy batshit idea. He started a column about the crazy batshit startup ideas, and we were the first one. He didn't label it as such. I would have been really pissed. Instead, in the office, we were like, yeah, we are now internationally famous.
Well, so you were the first in a series of one?
Batshit crazy, yeah. Yep, there were other. But after this, now when Rakuten, I realized not here in this part of the world, not many people might not know what is Rakuten. It's the 5th largest e-commerce company in the world.
How many of you knew that?
Okay.
Fewer than have been to Startup Grind events.
Yeah. When they acquired as much as I actually love Rakuten, I just wanted to leave pretty quickly to do something, start my own next things. And now I've been investing to a few startups. I'm a board member at the Future Retail Organization. So we can talk about the future of retail, definitely. And I'll say some words about the startups that I've invested to.
Cool. Hello. My first company that I founded in 1997, I'm going to age myself there, was a web design agency. And it sold for a number of millions of pounds in the early 2000s. But I'd left it long before that to go to university, which is a lesson, I think. And there's been a few examples of me being the fifth Beatle through my career. Another time I founded the company, I was between startup gigs, and I found a great CTO, and we founded the company that was effectively Eventbrite before Eventbrite was a thing. We had a great MVP that was ready to roll, and then the CTO left to go move to America and do something useless, and we never shipped it. And a couple of startup failures there. I also, and this is a bit relevant, but I worked for a while doing some program and product work at the BBC, and it was around the time iPlayer launched, and we put this incredible proposition together to power digital media for the UK media sector with the iPlayer back end, and it was rejected by the BBC Trust, and actually this week was something similar was approved, and that would have been awesome. So a few startup-y, product-y failures from me. That
Sounds like many of them, there's a running theme of them being too early.
I think so. Well, I mean, the first was just my parents. I was 17, 18, deciding that university was a better thing to do than web design. We actually had some very cool clients. They were friends of parents of friends, among others. And it was just a matter of persuading an older generation that entrepreneurship was a valid thing to pursue versus going to do a business degree.
And one thing David didn't mention, but I should call out as my second disclaimer. We also worked together. So David was previously at Google for Entrepreneurs, now called Google for Startups. And so by chance, when I was asked to moderate, I was like, oh, great, I get to troll my former
Slightly
teammate.
nervous about this one.
So I actually have a lot of questions down here on this piece of paper that I sourced from his former teammates, and we're going to get to those in a second. But Heikki, actually I'll start with you. So I'll be asking some of the more startup journey type questions. Hannah's going to focus more on what's true for the vertical and for fashion tech. And then we're both going to get into the really personal, emotional things, the tearjerker part of the evening. So Heikki, you mentioned that you're doing some investing now, and I'm curious, what have you found that you need to do to adapt from going from entrepreneur to investor?
I don't think I have. I don't think I am adapting at all. It's the investments that I'm doing. I feel I need to be actively there, and whenever you go out to get investment, just stay away from those investors who want to be actively involved. It's just pain in the ass. They come in thinking, they can solve your problems, and then because you cannot say no to your investor, you're actually forced to then action on their advice. But much of this advice is useless. I don't obviously think of that myself.
Except for yours.
Except for mine.
As an entrepreneur, had you said no to investors? How many founders are there in the room? Oh, quite more than Rakuten, fewer than have been to previous Startup Grind events. How, as a founder, do you say no to someone who's given you money and owns part of your company?
You say no if you have competitive bidding. And at FitsMe, we raised 15 million from VCs throughout the lifetime. And I did not have that luxury of saying no. My longest runway ever was 9 months. My shortest runway was it was 6 month period when we had a closing every 5 weeks. So many times I was preparing the speech for my team, coming in the morning to the office and saying, well, I'm sorry guys, you're all fired. Many of those my personal friends, their families would have been depending on me. And I do have to say, at one point I lost it. It was so overwhelmed about just focusing on fundraise. As a CEO, I was unable to focus on building the company. Now, I can blame investors for short runways, but in the end, I have to blame myself, obviously, not being able to succeed in this. I can only say, statistically speaking, Fitzmere was, in the end, it was a success story. We got to the exit, we got the offer that we couldn't refuse. The investors were happy. I cannot complain personally. But I didn't have luxury to say no.
So that's not saying no to money. How about saying no to an active investor an investor who has active advice for you, independent of take my money, but you should do this with your business, and you think that's the wrong thing?
Well, I had the CFO that we poached from our M&A bankers. Actually, a brilliant guy. He used the term smoke and mirrors. Trust me, none of the investors would ever want to hear this term. It leaked to one of them. To optically let them believe that you're actioning on the brilliant advice and then just going and doing your own thing. I have changed. And I used to believe that investors' advice is good, and I actually tried to action on this until I found out it was not good, so I wasted a lot of time. Now I would behave differently. Now I would just smile back and say what a brilliant advice, and then I would go do my own stuff and would not get distracted from the actual focus that we have, unless it's actually good advice.
Does it depend on the investor?
It depends on the length of runway. So, for example, if you know you need to go back to that investor in 3 months' time, you have to keep really a relationship. If your runway is 18 months, then you can go and do your own stuff. And investors don't realize this, but short runways make them part of the management team. Not willingly, but because their advice will be followed more closely, just to keep the relationship.
As an investor, how do you feel when the startups you're working with don't follow your advice?
I love it. I absolutely love it. I mean, seriously, if there's 2 people in the room who agree, then one of them is redundant. So I expect people to disagree and argue why they disagree. And when this argument is solid, absolutely, I'm going to agree with the argument. Even when this argument is, for example, great idea, but let's do it later, because now we have to focus on this. We can't just change focus and hop on different topics all the time. That's a very good argument on its own.
That's good. You follow your own advice. I mean, you're true to your own advice. David, so tell us a little bit about your role today, and how much of that is investing. How much of that is so actually you haven't spoken about your role, have you?
I haven't.
Tell us about Farfetch, and tell us about what you do at Farfetch.
Cool. So I joined Farfetch, having had the pleasure of working with Amrit for a number of years at Google. I joined in May last year, and my role there was to help to develop an innovation function, which was new at a company like Farfetch, which, if you don't know, is a tech platform for the luxury sector. And the work we do is really building that interface between a company that has only really recently, I guess, become a big scale-up. And we IPO'd in September last year, and our job is to be that interface with the startup ecosystem, and also to really work on ideas internally and working with founders outside. So we do this in a few ways. I'm going to make a shameless plug for our accelerator program, Dream Assembly, which, if you don't know about, we announced about 3 weeks ago. It's in partnership with Burberry and Stella McCartney, and we're focused on looking for startups at the seed stage who are really thinking hard about sustainability and positive impact in the luxury sector. There needs to be tech companies. Please, dreamassembly.com, go and apply. Applications close on Sunday, and we'd love to see any relevant businesses throw their name into the hat. We will review each of them. That is one part of what we do. So we have a fairly scaled funnel for looking at interesting companies for all sorts of reasons. So strategic partnerships, or vendor relationships, or our APIs, or investments as well. So the whole range. And we're very active, and we have people looking at this across the planet. And we talk to dozens and dozens and dozens of startups at any one time, because they're interesting conversations, or they could lead to something productive.
I want to hear more about. I'm going to let you plug actually some more, but I'm curious what. So you're looking for seed stage companies that are in high-end fashion and sustainability?
No, well, they don't have to be in high-end fashion, so they have to be relevant to all aspects or any aspect of the e-commerce journey. So we're looking for companies that are focused on anything from logistics solutions to improve sustainability and logistics for e-commerce, all the way through to circular economy, peer-to-peer. There's a lot of themes there. In fact, there's a catch-all. And if you are a for-profit business that has a bit of product market fit, a bit of traction, needs a bit of assistance, we are very interested. Our program is based in Lisbon in Portugal. Farfetch is a company that is British and Portuguese and very international. We're all over the planet. But our technical teams are in Portugal, largely.
Do they have to move to Portugal?
It's a wonderful city. Lisbon.
Weather like today, all year round.
Lisbon is stunning, and it's a great place to be. The program travels around a bit, so it will be in London a couple of times as well. But what we would promise is a really, really high quality of mentorship, of introductions. We're doing this for the sector generally. I think we feel very strongly that collaboration is something that is hugely important in the luxury sector, and we welcomed dozens of brands and really a lot of very high quality outside investors to the program last time, whether as mentors or at the demo days we run, and there was some really, really good outcomes. The program finished last in November, so things are in the works, but we're seeing some lovely stories, and we had some great feedback as well.
Let me do a plug-in for you, as I think you missed something. I was talking to your last cohort startups, and some of them were very early stage, and some of them were actually quite late stage. And I think what I liked about this program was, first, it was available to those different levels of companies, and all of them benefited from this. There's not many of those accelerators. There's just so many of those accelerators. Most of them are not worth spending your time with. But I think yours actually is.
Thank you. This is lovely.
And by the way, another plug, the Google for Startups Accelerator called Residency, of which Hannah is a member, is on the list of amazing accelerators that are worth your time.
I can vouch for that too. I haven't been part of the team, so...
So when's the next application date?
We just actually started, so these guys,
On Monday.
so you can't apply to anything right now. Keep your eyes out for that as well. I want to ask one more about, it's your turn, but I'll jump on this one, that's okay. I'm curious, which companies stood out, you don't have to give us names, but I'm curious what kinds of the startups stood out, whether it's what they were tackling or what stage they were at, or what they got out of the accelerator.
At Farfetch?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I could or if I should.
Well, I mean, all the companies that went through the first program public, but it's up to you to whether they provided
I think
feedback.
what I was surprising for me was there were some that were so early stage, they were just a flicker of an idea, and they got accepted. The idea itself was amazing and big, so I'm just thinking if you guys, thinking Lisbon is a big, great city with nice climate, you want to move to, then apply, right? If you have just a flicker of an idea. But the others were, they had massive clients already, they had the revenues, so it really worked throughout different stages. And normally accelerators, they focus on a certain level of startups, not a vertical.
I don't want to bang a drum here, but Farfetch, we are a company that has, we're 10 years old. The company has a lot of people that were brought in from the startup ecosystem that have been founders themselves that feel very passionately about supporting entrepreneurs, and we had a huge amount of interest internally for getting involved from real experts in the luxury e-commerce world, both on the pure luxury side and on the technology side. So that's probably what drove the experience. Please apply.
Great. So kind of heard about the kind of businesses you were looking to invest in, but if you were a startup now, or as investors, where do you think there is space in the market? Where would you be encouraging startups to spend time looking into which areas?
Should I go first? Okay, so when it comes to our sector broadly, I think there's there's a long journey ahead of us before really the opportunity for luxury fashion is fully met. I mean, these things never stand still, but I think the luxury world online is a fast emerging place, and there's a lot of technologies and UX and business models, I think, that are yet to be explored as applied to luxury fashion. When it comes to more commodity e-commerce, there are some amazing companies out there that are doing this incredibly well. Amazon has perfected a version of the e-commerce journey, getting people onto a site, getting them, finding the product they want, checked out really quickly, and the product distributed, sent out to them very, very quickly as well. In luxury and in fashion, I feel the experience by definition should be different, potentially richer in some ways, but should justify the really experiential aspects of luxury and try and replicate some of that in store that has been perfected over many, many decades by the luxury brands. And that, I think, is a real opportunity. There's a lot of movement in the space, a lot of really cool technologies, 3D and AR, and some fantastic models emerging, but there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, I'm going to tap into this benefit. I have access to the think tank at the Future Retail Organization. These guys, they look into the future, not the technologies available right now, but those 5, 10, maybe even 15 years from now. And a couple of them, I'm going to disagree. You saying that Amazon is a great place to find products. It's actually quite the opposite. The Amazon's benefit of having 160 million SKUs just in fashion, or at Rakuten 35 million SKUs in fashion. Yes, they do have all those really, really amazing products. But if you cannot find them, they don't exist. And so suddenly Amazon's strength of having a wide selection actually becomes a weakness. And at Rakuten, we figured out that weakness translates to about, I love saying this on stage, $1 trillion, $500 billion in lost sales for online fashion e-commerce.
You're saying the challenge of discovery leads to $500 billion of lost sales?
Yes. Just think of this. When people go to stores...
yeah, of course. We share everything.
When people go to stores, 70% of those purchases in fashion are impulse buys. Online, and when they go to Amazon, they go to look at the shoes, they end up buying shoes if they find the shoes. But they really venture to find a nice dress, jacket, anything else.
I sort of agree with you. I think Amazon didn't perfect its model with luxury fashion in mind. And if you're buying a phone case for $5, I think the model works very, very well. I think it's something that has to be thought through. The discovery process, the inspiration process, needs to be thought through for luxury.
Joy is discovery, whether it's luxury or whether it's just cheaper products. Joy of discovery online is completely missing. But I'm gonna actually touch a completely different topic where I think where the opportunity in fashion tech lies. When we look into the future, for example, again using Amazon as an example, Amazon, any of the platforms are not actually fashion shopping destinations. They are price comparison sites. If you go to look at trousers, you filter by brown trousers, you're going to see the brown trousers, and why would you buy a more expensive one if they all look the same? It's just a price comparison engine in that sense. In price comparison, it's going to end up just driving down the prices. No supplier, no brand, no retailer would survive in this fight. So suddenly you start looking at, so what's going to happen with those bigger brands? They start going towards baseline, choosing the products that sell really well, the basics, and they will stop manufacturing the products that are quirky and cool and amazing, and instead those niche designers and niche suppliers suddenly suddenly have the opportunity to supply those cool items to the market. And I think, for example, when it comes to supply chain, then all those fast manufacturing that can turn around, those small batch manufacturing, the cool designers will evolve. The technologies that can make the 3D visualization for design purposes and manufacturing purposes will suddenly start going up. When I look at fashion tech right now, I have to put it on timeline. It's perhaps we have walked 5% of this journey. Don't you? It would be amazing to be 10 years in the past, to think, oh my God, I could have done that and that. But think, if you would be 10 years into the future and you look at today and think, damn it, it's full of opportunities.
I just agreeing with that vociferously. I'm personally fascinated by the shoppers that are buying luxury now. And it is increasingly millennials, even Generation Z, that are buying really high-end products. And I think that's something of a shift. And the online and digital experiences that generation of shopper expects are driven by other digital experience they've had elsewhere, gaming, for example. And you look at some of the things that are going on in gaming, on the revenue side, look at Fortnite doing $1 billion last year based purely on virtual products. I think there is a rich experience in dressing up your Fortnite avatar in clothing or giving them dances. What's the dance that my daughter does at the swoosh? Floss, that's it. And this is revenue generative, but it's also scratching an itch. It's people's ability to represent themselves in a certain way using a digital avatar online. And I think that could indicate one potential route for UX of luxury.
I have a question to follow up on that, because what I'm hearing from you is some pessimism in terms of what Amazon and your former employer, I guess, are contributing, but also this optimism that a solving discovery or better discovery will lead to, what I'm hearing is more creativity, more of these niche diversity within fashion. So it's kind of going both directions. Which path are we going down?
Don't get me wrong. Rakuten and Amazon and everybody else is investing a lot to resolve this discovery. And once they do, then for any other platform it will be like, damn, how can we compete with a store which focuses or customizes the selection exactly for you? Out of product selection, in Amazon's case, out of 160 million, they're bound to have those 100 items that really talk to your heart and to your soul. So the current version is, fashion e-commerce 1.0, whatever you call it. The future version is going to be completely different. Amazon's Echo Look, well, people look at this and say, no, it's a commercial flop. People don't like cameras in the bedrooms. It's actually an amazing piece of technology, giving the machine learning feedback for Amazon to know which items go with other items using the customer base, millions of them by now using Amazon Echo Look, to provide this type of machine learning input, to learn what the discovery should look like. It's still early stages, yes.
Just to build on that, I think we have a perspective at Farfetch that only a certain proportion of spend for luxury will ever shift online. I think Bain said it was 25% by 2025, which means that the in-store experience is still of paramount importance. We have a division called Store of the Future, which is thinking hard about this in the luxury context and thinking hard about things like personalization, things like how data can inform the luxury purchase. And I think it shouldn't be forgotten that actually offline can learn very heavily from some of the established aspects of online as well. And the revenue opportunity, if I was setting up a startup now, offline in luxury, in bricks and mortar stores, is absolutely huge too, because customers' expectations, as I said earlier, are being driven by their experiences online. And the most retail stores today look beautiful. In super luxury, there's a lot of aesthetic, a huge amount of creativity has gone into thinking about how to lay out a retail store, but yet they still haven't necessarily moved into the 21st century, and that is happening now. there's live questions.
Wow.
I'll call that out. So for those of you who can't see what's in front of you but behind us, go to slido.com and you can add your questions there. I'm looking at the first one, and I wonder if your question, Hannah, was about your most important opportunity. I think that's where we got into the conversation about discovery. Do you have a different, I want to please the crowd, because I've also seen this number go up from 3 to 5 after that question was answered. Is there a different challenge than the opportunity you talked about?
Yes.
Both of you.
So, if you would believe media, you'd read daily about the death of stores, death of physical retail, right? Actually, you know what? To look at the future of stores, I'm going to tell you about the past. And I was born in Soviet Union, and when I went to shopping in Soviet Union, the stores were just they didn't sell anything. Honestly, I still remember when I was a kid, maybe 8 to 10, 9 years old, I got to go to a capitalist country and go to departments. God, it was just full of stuff. It was amazing. And you know what? Those stores of Soviet Union are dead. None of those exist anymore, except in North Korea, which I've also visited. I can say they're alive, quite alive there. And nobody says, "Oh my God, we're so sorry, they're dead." No, they have just transformed. And so the same applies to brick and mortar stores. I'm sure, I'm looking at this crowd, and some of you are already doing your own startup, but thinking of how do we take the stores to the future version of the stores. The online guys actually going offline. Farfetch is, I believe, doing something. Amazon is going offline stores, right?
Mm-hmm. Amazon Go in Seattle. Not fashion, but I think fashion will probably follow.
I was at the Amazon bookstore in New York last week, which it's mind-blowing to think that Amazon is running a physical bookstore. That company is amazing, and it has no dogma whatsoever.
Going back to the challenges question, so Amrit kind of mentioned at the beginning, it was a panel on fashion, and there were going to be 3 men on stage. And fashion tech kind of seems like a perfect storm of underrepresentation for women, tech underrepresentation of women, and then fashion doesn't have tons of women at leadership level, despite the fact that entry level is full of females. So I wondered if you have any experience or how you've dealt with this in your companies, or if you've seen it work well elsewhere, policies.
So I think this is it's a big issue, and it's not something that has a quick fix. From the Farfetch perspective, our chairwoman or co-chair is Natalie Massenet, who founded Net-a-Porter, and our chief strategy officer is female as well, and we are very, very thoughtful about how to try and build a diverse pipeline of startups that come through our programs as well. So 6 of the 11 companies that went through Dream Assembly, the first iteration, were female founded. But it is a problem, and it's something that I think requires proactive thinking about and being conscious of whenever we are doing things in the market. And I think there are some absolutely incredible founders out there of all creeds, genders, and colours. Really, it's important as a corporate not to be lazy when looking for companies to work with and just going to the obvious places.
You know, it is when I go to startup events and I look at the crowd, and it's just old men. And here, we're already seeing the change. It's awesome to see you all here. Women, I mean. The men, yeah, well, you're welcome too. But so when it comes to creative industries, the fashion tech, then obviously when I was doing FitsMe, it was just early days. It was full of engineers, and I realized when you want to be success in fashion, back then it almost felt like impossible thing to solve. You had to have the engineers who understand the mechanics and stuff, and then you had to understand the fashion, which was all about the emotions and feelings and understanding how the brands work. and none of my mathematicians had any clue about this. Sandra, thank you for joining Fitzme's team in the early days. And I thought it went from company to company, whether it was Fitzme or any of my clients, it was the same thing. All of them were struggling exactly the same. And now I'm seeing the change happening. But I'm also seeing the change happening on the investment scene. The VCs, there's still plenty of those old style VCs, but many who are saying we have to invest into female-led companies, female founders, because we actually believe they will be more successful, and that's amazing sign. There's a new investment fund here in London opening up soon. I believe Gender Equity Development Investments, GEDI for short, that is only investing into female founder-led companies. I'll be happy to do intros. Hell, actually, there's one thing I can do. I don't know if any of you need this, but if there's anyone who needs my mentorship, I'll promise I'll help you as much as I can. Just get in touch with me.
And round of applause, great. And I'll add, not just more investors that believe that female-led businesses do well, but lots of research to show actually that female-led businesses do well or better than the competitors. We have a new first question, but I actually want to go to we'll come to the first question, but actually the second one has been there for a bit, and I want to, Heikki, ask you, why did you decide to sell Fitzme to Rakuten? And did you negotiate, I'll expand on this, did you negotiate the deal with the founder directly? But tell us the story, and kind of from our first question, tell us not just the ups, but the downs as well.
So Fitzme certainly had its ups and downs. It was a roller coaster rather than a nice sailing. We had a turnaround, 10x, at one point in Fitzme's lifetime. The angels lost everything. At that point, the founders had, I think, about 2.5% of the company left. So, there were times in my life I went home and I said, I'm going to quit today. Tomorrow morning I'm going to go in and I'm going to say I quit. And then one of those things that really inspired me was actually Jack Ma. Not because he built Alibaba, but because he applied to Harvard and then he got rejected. And then he applied again and he got rejected. And he did it 10 times. And 10 times he got rejected. Now he was invited to be honorary professor at Harvard. But this type of relentless tenacity, that eventually if you keep doing something, you will be successful, that was throughout Fitzme as well. But when we went to Rakuten, we didn't go there to ask to be acquired. We went there, one of the prospects to get investment from. Strategic investment. And 2 weeks later, the right-hand guy from Rakuten calls me and asks me if I've considered selling. Boy, I was glad it was a phone call. As I knew our next fundraise would be difficult, and the offer was something that was obviously really, really good. So my face was doing ha. And I tried to master a really serious voice, and I said, no, absolutely not. We're not looking for acquisition at this point at all. We're on the growth curve, acquiring new customers constantly, and we're just looking for investment, but send in the offer and I'll have...
And that was a dishonest answer?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, it's, I don't know. If I would have gotten investment, we would have probably gotten getting another round closed and actually growing the company, but the offer was good. Our investors were very happy, so... in the end, I didn't get to build a unicorn as I wished, but it was still pretty good.
Sorry, I do have follow-up questions. I'm curious, how many, I don't want to call you guys out, but how many people know what he means by a down round and the implications of that? Oh, quite a lot. But speak through that a little bit more, because I think, we talk about raising money. At Google for Startups, we get questions all the time. Can you make this intro to this investor and so on? And everyone's pushing for their highest valuations because that's amazing. I raised whatever. 2 million and whatever million valuation. What, if it's not too painful, what led to the down round, and what does it really mean for your investors, and what does it mean for the company? I'm going to add, we're going to get some questions from the audience, so start thinking about questions you may want to have a microphone for.
So it used to be painful. Now you put a little bit time buffer, and it's not. Now it's educational. So we had just hired a new CEO, and obviously the new CEO comes in and he asks to have a long enough runway to execute on whatever the company needs to do. And we had the round coming up in 3 months after he was signed, and one of the investors pulled out. So suddenly the round was not happening. So all the hell breaks loose. I can't really name the names, but it was essentially in brink of closing it down. So we went to ACES. Nick Robertson told us that yep, they're gonna acquire FitzMe, but investors won't get anything. The founders and technical team will get some earnout. Investors will get a nice press release that ACES acquired them. One of the guys in management tried to do the management buyout, put the company into administration on purpose, so that it will be acquired from the investors. And me and my co-founder in Estonia, in the end, we thought, damn it, we don't have a choice. So we thought of putting our Estonian subsidiary, which owned the IP, into administration in Estonia. And of course, the London headquarters wouldn't have had any value without the IP. So it was like a crazy strategizing who can milk who, or who can I really do not recommend this to anyone. Luckily, in the end, the other investors said, we're going to come through. The investor that jumped out, they came back and said, oh, we're going to put in proportional as well. So the only guys who actually lost in this deal were the early round angel investors. And I need to add this for you guys. So the first time I raised my VC fund, a VC investment ever, and I had just signed, and my VC looks at me and says, so one time in the future, what will you do when you'll have this fabulous exit, hopefully? And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to start investing into cool startups as an angel. And he looks at me deeply into the eyes and says, but you do know that angels, they always lose everything. And that's why valuation doesn't matter. It's the terms that really matter.
No one looks that eager out there. I don't know. There's a question at the back, I think.
Yeah. We have a mic out there, or? Come. I can repeat the question. We can. Yeah. Go ahead. Okay, I'm going to summarize, but call me out if I don't get it exactly right. So we've talked about UX and user experience a lot, and we've talked about it both in the context of online and offline. Offline can also be technology enabled, whether you're using VR or AR in the store. What is the progress, as in like what is the future that you see in terms of UX, but also in terms of devices? Is that a Okay, so Okay, so expanding what it means, what UX means to a more holistic experience, both device enabled as well as beyond.
Look, I think I agree. I think there's been this absolute Cambrian explosion of different potential pathways for UX or interfaces or experience in general to go. You see everything from, the sort of ultrasound-based in-the-air haptics, the Ultra Haptics, which is a Bristol-based startup, can project people's hands, to the use of gloves for VR. You see all sorts of things around size and fit and virtual try-on, whether using VR or using the Zozo suit, which I know had a really interesting cycle around it. That this really is it's a fascinating area. It does talk to this convergence of online and offline, and really those two domains are moving together pretty quickly.
There's a lot of experimentation going on, including the Zozo suit, which now is failed experiment, but I got really good photos me wearing this. It has failed, yes. They deemed it important enough to put it into the annual report. That was one of the causes that they had the loss.
It was accuracy, primarily, using the data points it could generate.
Those who don't know, it was a tight-fitting suit you put on with the QR codes when you use mobile phone to take multiple pictures, and it will take body measurements so that you can use it for online shopping to get the right fit. But when it comes to the UX of stores, whether online or offline, let me touch the offline stores. And you know how our sense of fashion is being influenced by our friends, by the media, the TV, the celebrities, and then we walk down the street and we walk into a store, and we are restricted by the decision that the store owner has done to put into the stock. So we walk in and we find something that fits our sense of style, or it doesn't. But the truth is, quite soon you wear the Google Lens and you walk down the street, and you see somebody wearing something you like, and it's likely available somewhere in the world. So instead of those shopping windows we have today, or the stores that we have today, the whole world becomes a shopping window. And it's a dramatic shift in the UX of shopping, whether it's mobiles, the augmented reality, or the HoloLens, or anything like this.
Yeah, you pair augmented reality with the whole infinite shelf concept, and it's incredibly powerful. And I'd also build on that. I think the public domain is becoming a really interesting space for luxury, and a little bit of outside of luxury. But I love what Nike did with its Stash app. I don't know if anyone knows this, but check out the videos on YouTube. It's effectively a solo-mo, if people still use that phrase, game to try and find product drops embedded in cities. And I guess this is a way in which Nike has replaced the old school, which is when you release a new product, it's seeing queues around the block, queuing up to, buy something that's limited edition. That has now gone full Pokemon Go, which is really a fascinating shift.
Take the first one. Will mass customization become mainstream, and if so, when? Sorry, and it's easier for me to read, I guess, than you guys craning your necks.
I guess I actually kind of have background, because Fitzme, the previous company, it wasn't, to start with, it was not actually a virtual try-on company. We built it to be, we dubbed it the McDonald's for custom-made clothing. You walk into a laser scanning cabin and you'll have your measurements taken, and then quite quickly you'll have, and cheaply, you'll have the custom-made item made. And then we went to the investors and they said, we like this idea. We also like your backup idea of the virtual fitting room. We're going to invest either, but you have to choose one. We chose the e-commerce application, which was just way bigger. As to this, I hugely believe in mass customization. I don't believe in the mainstream. And the reason why not is there's, as I said before, Amazon alone has 160 million SKUs in fashion alone. You will find already ready-made product that is better than you can imagine if you'd want to order something customized for you. However, I do think there's still a huge market segment that is looking for mass customization, which means customization at cheaper price, at affordable price. The segment is so huge, and there's not much competition there that maybe there was one of you asking this, or multiple of you. I think there's a huge market opportunity there. Not everything has to be for mainstream.
I think what people want today is increasingly uniqueness. They want to be wearing an item of clothing that isn't what someone else on the same streets is wearing, or have an accessory that is different and unique. And one response to that is customization. The other is better discovery. And I think in luxury, there's always going to be a strong voice for the creatives that sit within the luxury houses. And there's almost, I guess there's a tension between real full customization and the voice and the style and the brands that are, the product cycle, the fashion ranges that are released. So I think it's a big theme, but actually it could be solved by better discovery in many cases, given the number of products that are out in the market.
And by the way, how are we doing on time? I know I have to. We're good on time. Two more questions. 5 minutes. 2 more questions. This one's been on here a lot. It remains on here and it's high up. Aren't Google and Instagram the biggest barriers to product discovery? We've talked a lot about discovery with aggressive PPC and paid product advertising.
I think it's a huge problem in Europe, in the US, in the rest of the world. Amazon, for example, in Germany has, I might get the numbers slightly wrong at the moment, I believe they have, from all the online fashion purchases, about 35% is done on Amazon.de. The next one is eBay, which is way down there. And then the third one has about 2 or 3% market penetration. It's like nothing. And when it comes to Amazon, obviously, when you take the whole fashion market, it doesn't really matter. People still go to small, nice, quirky shops and department stores and other shops, the physical stores and the multitude of other online destinations. But when it will start being a matter is when e-commerce grows even more. Instead of being, 20% of 18% of the market penetration in fashion, it will become to be 30%. And suddenly Amazon will have this monopoly in the market. And everybody else is just way down there. And obviously it's not Google or Instagram, it's going to be Amazon who's going to choose which of those cool designers will surface and which of them will not.
I think the Instagram's fascinating. There's been a mushrooming of influencers, many of whom use organic reach and are not paid. Some are clearly, and there is a need for transparency with influencers. But we certainly see a lot of the narrative being driven by influencers, and that is, as I said, it's largely an organic play. Or if there are payments, they're payments to the influencers. They're not using the Instagram pay-per-click or marketing engine itself. So I think there is innovation around this sort of background that, clearly pay-per-click fees are going up, the auctions are getting busier, and the number of ad networks is concentrating.
On the question, up here now on fast fashion, I thought that'd be an interesting one, given what you were talking about sustainability earlier, and the UK government was talking recently about introducing a tax on fast fashion to deal with waste. So how do you think we tackle fast fashion and the sustainability issues that it creates?
Yeah, this is a big issue, and it's one of the reasons why we are very focused upon it. I think the statistic is that the average item of fashion lasts 5 weeks in a British female's wardrobe at the moment, which is an insanely short period of time if you think about it. And the externalities that creates in terms of waste, in terms of carbon, and so much product ends up in landfill. I think fast fashion has a role to play, but we are very much proponents of conscious purchases, and the sort of product, the sort of quality and price point in luxury is a very different kind of purchase to a fast fashion purchase. It requires a lot of thinking. It requires a lot of love for the brand, for the material, and I think if you can buy something once that costs maybe 20 times as much, but you love it and you use it for 2-3 years, that's very important. We're also seeing increasingly the role of the circular economy and peer-to-peer as well. So thinking about what to do with product when you no longer want it, rather than sticking it in the bin, it's potentially selling it to someone else or lending it to someone else or returning it. And I think this is a really interesting area for innovation. We see a huge amount of startups that are thinking about that particular aspect.
We're just about out of time, but I realized that we promised you fashion questions, we promised you entrepreneurship journey questions. I didn't get enough of the personal from you guys, so I'm going to do actually 3 questions to end very quickly, because Hannah, you got a question up there as well. So I'm going to give you each a question, and you can decide they're different questions. So for Hannah, what did you do at Amazon Fashion, and how, in your opinion, will it influence companies like Farfetch and the future of fashion? Heikki, I'm curious, on February 27th, 2039, where are you going to be, and what will you be doing? And David, I would like to know who, in your opinion, is the Dele Alli of your industry?
So I worked for private brands at Amazon, which is Amazon developing their own clothing lines. I think what it made Amazon realize was how difficult discoverability was, something that they'd never had to worry about really before, apart from on behalf of customers. So I think there's a lot of research and spend now definitely going into making Amazon a more customized and easily searchable place for fashion. Amazon was designed as a bookstore, and it works great for buying books and media, and there really definitely is an understanding now that it doesn't really work for fashion, or and the curation on site isn't great for those kind of purchases. So I think hopefully there'll be a lot of innovation in that space.
My brother often asks me this, so what is your goal in life? And if you don't have a goal, how do you know where you're going? And I was struggling to answer this question, like I would have struggled answering your question. And the answer is this, that for me personally, I think for many entrepreneurs, it's not really the goal that is important. The VCs might tell you it's important to exit with multiple millions. I think the only reason startup founders do their startup or anything else in life is the passion, it's the journey that matters, not the goal. And I don't know where I'm going to be in 2038, but I think the journey there is going to be really, really interesting. And you know what? At every time an event like this, I feel privileged knowing that there will be people in the audience, if you want to measure it by will be millionaires, you want to measure it by changing the world, you have changed the world, and you don't even know it yet. And I'm privileged to be in this company of yours. Hopefully, who knows, maybe we can do some of those things together in the future.
So, for those who don't know, Dele Alli is a footballer from my club, Tottenham Hotspur, and England, and a breakout star. And I'm gonna answer this question in a slightly more general direction. I think without naming names, I get inspired by Dele Alli as a Spurs fan. I also get inspired by a lot of founders that we see who are doing similar things. They are trying to, for want of a better word, disrupt and bring a fresh approach. And in the same way that Dele Alli popularised the floss, as I referred to earlier, from Fortnite, meaning my 8-year-old will not stop flossing, I think it's incumbent on people in this room to think about how to help the evolution of the luxury world forwards. We, as Farfetch, really invite partnership and engagement with anyone that has a good idea and a fresh approach.
And so any of you could be the Dele Alli of the luxury fashion sector.
I have one quick question. Can you do the Dele Alli challenge?
No, but I've tried repeatedly.
Marion, we've got some founders coming on stage.
Not on stage, I'll do it in the, you can wrap it up.
Oh, okay, so we're gonna wrap this up. And there's networking back there. But join me in thanking our speakers and my co-moderator.